Minister Carney announced his creation of Canada's first national sovereign wealth fund. And he says the fund will be used to finance construction of major projects of national interest. So he's essentially saying it's for the people. But unlike the world famous fund that Norway has, that's funded by the budget surplus, Canada actually has budget deficit. So where's the money coming from? Let's take a look. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced his plan to create Canada's first sovereign wealth fund. The Canada Strong Fund will serve as an investment vehicle to finance major projects of national interest and will work in partnership with the private sector. Carney said that the Canadians will be able to contribute to and benefit from the fund, investing alongside the private sector and international partners. So if you have a little bit of extra money, we'll make it easier for you to invest in the fund to help build Canada strong for all. In a statement, the federal government said the fund will include projects in clean and conventional energy, critical minerals, agriculture, and infrastructure, with an initial endowment of $25 billion. So, first of all, I guess it's fair to say that at least he's doing something. Now, is it actually going to enrich the investors, the regular people investing in this fund? Let's take a look. Because, of course, there is already a statement from Mr. Pierre calling the fund essentially a sovereign debt fund, because borrowing yet another $25 billion out of the economy to subsidize projects that the government still cannot figure out how to approve will only cost hardworking Canadians. And I mean, some people might dismiss this as another complaint of the current government without an actual solution to all these problems we're having. But of course, it is a reasonable concern, nonetheless. If it's just more money to give private companies, that will eventually go over budget again, or completely stalled because there is some disagreement on a certain plot of land, for example, then it will be a waste of money, absolutely. And then do you really want your hard-earned dollars kept in this fund? It's tricky. So Carney said the Canada Strong Fund will be managed by an arm's-length independent crown corporation that will report to Parliament, and his government will spend the next few months consulting on specific aspects of the fund. And of course, that's my favorite thing. I mean, you gotta admit that for people who definitely win and make money in all these projects are the consultants. I'm sure it's a very complicated process, and you need people who have knowledge in this specific setups. But I'm surprised not every consultant in Canada is just incredibly wealthy, because the number of consultants the government uses is absolutely insane. So, describing the fund as essentially a national savings and investment account, Carney said the fund is being designed to grow wealth for future generations. So this will be a Government of Canada fund, but most importantly, this will be a people's fund. It will be your fund. And of course, as someone who invests in a lot of, public companies, public ETFs, very little private credit. There's some beauty to this in investing or putting some money towards, the future or your own backyard. And when I say your own backyard, usually in investing implies your own country, the Canadian stocks. But all those Canadian stocks, again, are private companies that have to report to their shareholders. Versus here, you're actually investing in something that's supposed to or could make Canada greater as a country. And of course, I don't think the details have been released yet on the plans, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of reworking because, for example, being in Western Canada, if you invest a lot of money into it and this improvement project is just the high-speed rail between Toronto and Montreal or Toronto and Quebec City, I don't remember. This is a hot topic right now out in the East. Then it's tough. Great. Canada is going to invest it and it will actually bring you some money back, but they going to invest in all provinces and all territories kind of equally? Obviously not. That would kind of be silly. I mean, from a business perspective, because you still want a return on your investment. So again, it's such a big country. It's absolutely hard to put national interest into, a black or white category. If we invest in new pipeline going south or a new pipeline going to, again, the coast of BC or to the East Coast, will some people regret that it's essentially their money funding this? Now, that's the real question. This will give Canadians a direct stake in our nation's long-term prosperity and help build long-term national wealth. Again, I guess the biggest one is who defines the long-term prosperity here? Whether it's, the tech sector in Vancouver or the bankers in Toronto, petroleum engineers in Calgary, or farmers in Saskatchewan. It's very, very different depending on who you talk to. He did compare it to the Canadian Pacific Railway that was built in the 1870s. The federal government will support these projects through loans, grants, and other incentives. And of course, he said that the proposed plans would be different from things like the Canadian Pacific Railway, which was built by displacing Indigenous people from their land while workers labored under appalling conditions. And the only people who benefited from these projects were the companies that built them. And of course, it's always a concern if government is just giving out grants through private companies whose main goal is to make a profit. Will your return actually be in the best place? Of course, Bill C-5, I remember it was big deal last year because, passed through Parliament last June. It says the Building Canada Act enables the federal cabinet to pick projects, approve them upfront, and override federal laws, environmental reviews, and the permitting process. Some people say it's a slippery slope. I don't know what kind of projects the government will approve and kind of override the laws. On the other hand, for projects of this magnitude in a country so big, sometimes some things have to be overridden. So it's a very, very thin line you gotta walk, right? When he announced MPO, Carney said it would help structure and coordinate financing from the private sector, provincial territorial partners, and the federal government to ensure taxpayers get value for money. So, of course, with any investment, that's the final goal. So hopefully they'll actually give us a little bit more information soon. The investment exists, it comes from our country, it just can't get its return in our country. Putting another $25 billion on a national credit card to pad the liberal slush fund will not change that. If a project had business case, why would the government need to fund it? If it doesn't have a business case, why would the government want to fund it? And can't believe that was just today, but absolutely. If we compare it to something like a GIC, this is the return we expect, something that we have to pay taxes on because it's a non-registered account for 1 year. Can the government actually provide more than this? You would hope so, because this is the safest investment out there. Of course, if you look at something like XEQT, you see a 30% increase year over year. And while this is actually not the best picture, perhaps we can get something like 5 years and divide this by 5, which will be around about $13, I think, 13.5%. So does the government give you more security than global stock market? You would hope so. At least potentially, if there is a risk that you will not lose your investment, you're guaranteed that at least your principal will stay safe with a high upside of return. Perhaps it's not such a bad idea. Then another question, of course, is the liquidity. If you need the money tomorrow, can you sell it? Can you get the money out of this fund? So that's something that's to be announced. We don't know yet. If it pays something like 4%, just get a GIC at 3% because that thing is going to be liquid. Or if it pays, let's say 10%, but you have to lock your money for 5 years. Not a guarantee. There's also inflation. But if it's something to build an energy corridor or a pipeline and it has to be over a certain number of years, can you afford not having that liquidity, not being able to sell tomorrow or even in a year? That's kind of where you have to make this decision if it comes to actually investing in it. And you know what I was surprised about? Of course, I've seen a lot of comments on Reddit. There is a lot of people just describing it, a little something about the Norwegian fund explicitly investing surplus, and here more about supporting economically important projects. And some of them are really great takes. I wonder if they'll make this exempt from capital gains to encourage Canadians to invest. I mean, that could be something, because if you have to pay, again, even 50% of your taxable rate, that could make a difference. And they're insane. If they don't do this, the only way they consider putting money in the cap gains are exempt. But surprisingly, there is very little negative talk here. This will likely be very similar to the one helped set up in the UK, mainly being used for major funding. I really hope that this is the first step into universal basic income, which is not the case. And again, reading the articles is very much not. All Canadians can invest in Canada without risk to initial investment. I have been asking for this for a few years and it arrives today. And of course, this is incorrect. You could always, buy Canadian government bonds. So very little negative criticism. As I mentioned, I made a video about the grocery benefit not too long ago. And there has been a lot of people really upset about it. Even like r/Canada, this is a subreddit that has the hottest takes I ever see anywhere on the internet, is actually incredibly reasonable. And that tells you something. I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but with the goal of using it to fund nation-building project, if it's successful, depend if Canadians can get out of their own way and allow these projects to be built. And I'll say the different provinces, farmers, opposition parties, and NIMBYs will make this very hard. And again, I've talked about this earlier in the video. Who decides what the national priority is? Which province? Who decides what land the pipeline goes on? It's a very sensitive situation. A sovereign wealth fund is generally considered good, provided it's funded, used for capital investments, and not rated and used to cover up deficits, like Alberta's fund has been for the last 3-4 decades. And this is true. Alberta has been using a lot of the money from the fund. If this is used effectively, this could represent a seismic shift to streamlining project approval. Devil is in the details, but of course, I will remain cautiously optimistic until we get those further details. And of course, absolutely correct. We have not heard everything. I'm glad things are happening. Directionally is good, but I'm worried we're not actually changing the core items, which is to say the regulatory structure that actually allows nation building to take place on a reasonable time frame. Critical infrastructure has turned into a political hot potato. I'm reminded of Massey Tunnel replacement in BC. Decades of back and forth between new bridge and tunnel, we could have been driving over a new structure by now if we got out of our own way. This is a default condition in Canada, years or even decades of consultation before anything happens. And as I said, people who definitely make money, who benefit from these projects, no matter what, are the consultants. Cannot believe how often I wish I went into consulting. So this is going to replace the Canadian Infrastructure Bank. The Strong Canada Fund will serve as an investment vehicle to major financial projects. Imagine if we hadn't sold off Petro-Canada, privatized the profits, and leave the rest for taxpayers. We would have had sovereign wealth fund as large as, if not larger than Norway. Yes, but that would have been communism. And again, r/Canada is one of the most vocal subreddits, the most opinionated, the strongest opinions, and the hottest takes. The fact that everything is discussed, unless it's bought for some reason, every take is just reasonable. I mean, of course, directionally it's good, devil's in the details, but I will remain cautiously optimistic. You don't see this kind of discourse often. Whenever there is a new bill proposed, a new plan for infrastructure introduced, or anything happening really, there is a lot of people complaining about the government, about the opposition, about everything. Seeing how here people are, for the most part, discussing it respectfully. And of course, I haven't scrolled down too much. Yeah, this is very impressive. Anyways, we'll get more details as more information comes in. So I'll probably be making another video on this once they release a little more info. But pretty cool. As I said, no matter where this goes, it seems like a very solid proposition by the Prime Minister and the government. And I don't know about you guys, but there is something beautiful about investing in projects that empower Canada. And again, I'm not sure what these projects are going to be, whether it's going to be another factory in Montreal, a pipeline in Alberta, or a mining project in BC. I'm not quite sure about that. But there is just some beauty to that. As opposed to investing in oligopolies in different industries or private companies that, again, don't hold the national interest at heart, but instead the profit to their shareholders. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's their job. But I'm just saying, what do you guys think? Should Mr. Carney be doing potentially something else with his time? Or is this exactly what he promised? This exactly what you should expect from the man with his education and credentials? Let me know down in the comments below. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.